I personally, how expensive things are on the market. We are students. Sometimes you have to buy books, you have to buy textbooks to study, you have to buy other things, and the things are just increasing. The moment you go, maybe you buy a textbook for 50 cedis, the next time you go is 70 cedis. And we are students schooling. So, yeah, he should do something about it.
Things regarding to the economy and also employment opportunities for the youth. That's what I want to mainly see, because these days youth unemployment is on the rise. So I'm thinking that there should be a policy that would give employment to the youth.
Me personally, my expectation is for the president to tell us why he changed some ministerial positions, especially like the key ministerial positions like the financial minister of finance, and now he's giving him a special advisor to the president on economic and negotiations. So meaning that he take him from there from fire to fire. Anytime there's a contract concerning finance, he's still the one that's going to hold it. So meaning he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything obvious. It's just like, and I want him to also address an issue on the KPI, why he said the KPI should go and audit.
KPMG, you mean?
KPMG should go and audit.
On the SML deal.
On the SMLG. Why? I can't believe somebody can give contract for 10 years. It's not believable. It's violated the procurement rule that somebody should give a...
Student leaders, we expect that at the end of the day, the president will tackle on the TVET, progress of TVET, what they are doing to make sure that the technical universities in the country are uplifted to the standard that we all want to see it. Being called technical university isn't just the main idea or the motive behind changing it from polytechnics to technical universities, but we should see production, we should see productivity at the end of the day. The technical university students or graduates are people that government can use to develop this country. With technical education, I believe that we will not be where we are. We will not be waiting for IMF bailouts and the rest, because we have the technocrats in the country. How do we make and package these people? At the end of the day, contracts that are awarded in this country are given to technocrats who are graduates from the technical universities. Contracts that has to do with electricals, manufacturing. We have the people in this state. Let's use our own people, and this country will be a place where everybody would want to visit. For instance, you take a look at the labor we produce every now and then. There are countries who are in need of trained labor. We have these people from our technical universities. The government can liaise with the technical universities. At the end of the day, we can export labor to countries where the government will be making something out of it, and will be creating employment for graduates from the technical university. So we would want to also him to touch on the delays in the student loan trust fund. Most of our colleagues who apply for these things are not able to get it in time to pay their fees, hence hindering their progress in education. We also want him to look at the scholarship schemes in this country. What should be the motive behind awarding students scholarships? Let's focus on the technical education. Let's give scholarships to people who are deserving of it, not MPs and people who are in privileged positions already. Let's give it to the people who actually deserve it. So these are many of the things that we expect as leaders of the technical universities in the country from the government of the Ghana. For instance, if you go to Wa Technical University or Dr. Hilelima Technical University, this is the only university in the country without a hostel facility. Can you believe that?
Welcome back. Of course, our focus is going to be on the SONA. And today, President Akufo-Addo is expected to deliver his last State of the Nation address. He's expected to give an account of how he's managed the country over the past year and give a projection of what to expect as the year wears on. This being his last is going to be crucial. We'll also have a review of SONA 2023 and a preview of SONA 2024. Right before I announce the guests joining me to analyze the entire situation on governance, economy, agriculture, and all of that, what you just saw was, our going out there, the citizens' microphone, our engagement with ordinary Ghanaians on the streets. That was from Accra, and you heard the sentiments shared there. We'll also be sharing with you in the course of this conversation the sentiments from Kumasi in the Ashanti region. Just to sample what is percolating in your minds in respect of the State of the Nation address. Popularized under John Agyekum Kufuor, it's been through a series of events in Parliament, and today we'll have another installment, the last for President Akufo-Addo. But joining us for a discussion on some of these salient matters, Dr. Michael Ayamga. He's a development economist and senior lecturer, University for Development Studies. He joins the conversation. Doc, good morning.
Good morning, Ben. Happy to see you again.
It's good to have you join the conversation. Now, we'll focus on governance-related matters, among others, and of course, we'll also talk about the economy. But I'd like to find out from you, in summary, since this is going to be the last effort, the last push of President Akufo-Addo, how would you assess him in terms of governance and everything you've seen up till now? And then you can break down your assessment from last year to this time this year.
Well, thank you very much. I was just looking at the background on your screen, and I remember the first time the president walked into Parliament to deliver the State of the Nation address. The enthusiasm, the optimism, even those who were skeptical about his ability to lead this country were all optimistic, because despite the challenges we had, the country had just weathered the energy crisis storm and was ready to take off. I think that the president, on seeing the economy, he was so shocked that Ghana was in that state that he said that, Ghana can do without aid. So he became an international star, traveling from country to country, meeting donor agency to donor agency, and telling them that Ghana is beyond aid. I quite remember some of my German friends sending a soundbite of the president telling European Union leaders that Ghana was pursuing a path beyond aid. You look at that picture and you compare it today when he walks into Parliament, this time not behind and not being led by the Honorable Michael Quay, but the Right Honorable Alban Nana. You look at the contrast between then and now, and that sums up what the president has done in the last 8 years. To all intents and purposes, I don't want to belittle other Ghanaians. I believe we all want the good of the country. So I am no more a Ghanaian than the president is, but judging by his record, I think that he should be apologizing to Ghanaians in the first step. He should acknowledge failures in his government and move on. But I can tell you that we moved from a country that was seen as capable of going without aid to a country that people think that we're a lost cause, and we must do debt restructuring in order for us to be supported. It is not something to be playing diplomacy and politics with. I think that the last 8 years have been lost. 7 years. They are lost years in Ghana, lost opportunity and severe hardship. If you take governance, our institutions are at their lowest level. They are very weak, not able to hold anybody into check. Checks and balances are almost non-existent. And if you look at the economy, I don't need to say much. We all have the numbers to look at. I followed one of my idols in the country, Honorable Kwame Pianim, and when he said that this country has no economy, I felt that that was the classic definition of the state of Ghana's situation. We virtually do not have an economy to manage. We are on autopilot and food is being served in the plane, hoping that we find a place to land and then the next crew takes over. But if you ask me now, I think that the president ought to be very honest with us. This is his last State of the Nation address. And personally, I am glad it is that we are going to have fresh blood come next year, and that the president will be bold enough to admit that he failed Ghanaians largely, not intentionally.
Are you holding your breath for that, for any sort of apology? You know that's not going to happen.
Yes, that's not going to happen because he's a politician. That is not going to happen because he thinks that many Ghanaians don't know. That is not going to happen because of the extent to which politicians think the citizenry are gullible. That is not going to happen because they think that no matter what happens, there's a certain group of people in the country that will ignore that and still follow their lead. So that is why it is not going to happen. Anywhere in the world, half of this government would have resigned. The president probably would be facing serious questions if he was still in office anyway. So we don't need to be diplomatic with the president. Has it been a total disaster? No, I would say that he has made successes somewhere in terms of, I always mention it, his ability and his instrumentality in securing peace in Dagbon, but that has almost been wiped out by his failure to stabilize the situation in Baku. And more or less, we see the state agencies, the security agencies more or less acting like enablers of the conflict in Baku, further internally displacing people and causing massive hardship in the country. So, yes, he did do well with Dagbon, putting his foot on the ground and ensuring that we have some kind of peace in Dagbon. But that has been wiped out, as I said, by Baku. His statements in the past suggesting that he's a highly transactional president that has believed in the philosophy of quid pro quo, scratch my back and I'll scratch your back, has further made him lose the shine that he had, the expectation we had about him. Regardless of me, I didn't vote for him. I don't think I did the second time. I don't know. But we have always seen a President Akufo-Addo as a champion.
You've forgotten whether or not you voted for Akufo-Addo in the second term. Is that what you're saying? How could you possibly forget?
I want you to feel good because I didn't. The second time I didn't. I don't have to.
Did you vote for Akufo-Addo the first time?
All I can say is that I've voted MPP before. I've been a polling agent for MPP before. So
you've been a polling agent for the MPP before.
Oh yeah. When I was at the university, I have been before. So when I say things, I say them out of my desire to see this nation move forward. I don't look forward to any opportunities. I speak the way I speak now. If you check my track record, my blogs, and you see when NDC was in power, you would think I was a member of the MPP. So I believe that facts ought to be spoken and spoken unequivocally. And I think that many people who voted for President Akufo-Addo have regretted it. Many of us saw him as an icon, a pillar, a beacon of freedom of speech. And he has come to do the exact opposite. There has never been a time that journalists are scared like they are now. Radio stations are being closed left, right, and center. And you have people walking into studios and beating journalists and so on and so forth. In the past, we saw them even getting imprisoned, and one president pardoned them. Here, nothing even happened. And that is the difference and how far we have fallen. So even on the rule of law, we have the challenge. On the issue of checks and balances or equal branches of the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, we see that independence almost shrinking and the president expanding his powers. An example is what happened during the call by MPs for the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta to step aside. The president did not only whip them in line, he ensured that they all obeyed what he wanted, and then eventually he decided to remove him and elevate him to a Minister of Finance in the presidency. So you have the actual Minister of Finance answerable to a Minister of Finance at the presidency.
And that's a conversation. That's a conversation we can have shortly, because yes, now it's been confirmed. Ken Ofori-Atta, for example, being that special advisor and investment consultant, so to speak, for government. But hold for me, Dr. Ayamga. Let's go to Parliament this morning. Our parliamentary correspondent, Kweku Asante, is on hand. He's going to walk us through what we can expect today and give us timelines. Kweku Asante, if you can hear me from Parliament, what is going on? What do you see? What can you tell us?
Well, very shortly, we expect that the president and his entourage, as well as some dignitaries who have been invited to honor this message on the State of the Nation address, will now come in. But it's an empty house now. MPs are not yet seated. We expect that in the coming hours, all of them will now troop in to take their seats. It's the president's penultimate message on the State of the Nation address, what we all normally call the State of the Nation address. And so the president is expected somewhere in December or early January to address Parliament again before he finally leaves office at the end of his 8-year tenure. So it's a 4-item agenda today on the floor of the House. There are going to be prayers, there are going to be the national pledge, there will be a statement by the Right Honourable Speaker, and then the President, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, will deliver his message on the State of the Nation address. In fact, if you look at the days now, the chairs are set. The President's days that he speaks on has also been set, and so very soon that the expectation is that the President will now come in for the message to be delivered. But today we expect the President to hammer on the economic challenges that the country has been facing over the past few years and what exactly his government has been doing to fix that. The economy is currently struggling. Government says they've turned the corner. We expect the President to give some better and further specifics on that. We also have a new majority leader in Parliament. This is his first official assignment. And so, Akakpo, the expectation in Parliament, in fact, you've been engaging the expectation of MPs ahead of the State of the Nation address, what exactly it is they expect the President to say about what really the State of the Nation is. Of course, as usual, this has been divisive along partisan lines. We have the NDC MPs really believing that the President has nothing new to tell Ghanaians and that the true state of the nation is felt in the people's pocket. The true state of the nation is felt in terms of the level of inflation in the country, that the true state of the nation is felt in terms of lending rates and all the crucial economic challenges we face now. The governing side, however, tell us that they believe that a lot of things have been done by this government to ensure that things are turned for the better. And so it's expected to be the normal partisan things we see here. We expect that MPs will come in, usually with their placards, every now and then singing chants to the President. For those who support him and those who do not, probably will be saying certain things. So, Akakpo, the President's message on the State of the Nation address has been expected. This is the first time in a long while that we haven't had fluctuating dates. The President announcing that this is the specific date they are going to address the nation, and then it will be moved. Today, the 27th of February, the President is coming into Parliament. A number of dignitaries are expected. The question also is whether or not the former President John Dramani Mahama will come. He has skipped a number of national events that have been heralded by President Akufo-Addo. We would expect to know if he will be here. As of yesterday, he was in the Savannah region concluding his Building the Ghana We Want tour. And so we expect that he may be coming in here, expecting that the next major State of the Nation address will be conducted by him if he's lucky enough to be elected again by the people of Ghana to become the president again. So that is the state in Parliament now. Empty chambers, it's almost 9 a.m., but proceedings hasn't quite started yet. Yesterday, we were picking some signals that the Speaker of Parliament wanted to do something new. He wanted to ambush the President with the anti-gay bill, and that this morning the anti-gay bill may have been passed before the State of the Nation address, but that has not found expression on the other paper. And so this will largely be ceremonial. There will be the prayers, there will be the national pledge, there will be a statement by the Right Honourable Speaker Alban Kingsford Sumana Bagbin, and then the President will zoom in right into the national address. Normally, this is expected to start at 10 a.m., but as we've known over the past few years, this delays quite some time, and sometimes it goes up until noon, midday. So the Parliament has really been prepared for today's occasion, and MPs on both sides really say that they really want to listen to what the President has to say, including some majority MPs, of course. Questions about whether or not Ken Ofori-Atta's new position is merited and all that. So we will get to find out in terms of how that message will go down with Ghanaians. Benjamin.
Well, Kweku, thank you very much. That is Kweku Asante. He is our parliamentary correspondent, bringing us these tidbits from within the chamber of Parliament. Of course, one thing you cannot guarantee, like he made mention of, in recent years, the days have not exactly been constant. Oh, it will be today, and then it's been shifted. Today, we're having it. They're sticking to the date, but the time usually is where the devil is. But you can trust us right here to bring you every last bit of that address. Let me come back to Dr. Michael Ayamga. If you can hear me, you had started talking about Ken Ofori-Atta lurking in the shadows. Now, there's some interesting bit in there because now we've seen that release from the office of the president, which talks about his appointment as senior presidential advisor and special envoy for international finance and private sector investments. It's dated, guess when? The 15th of February, 2024. What makes this interesting is the fact that it had been spoken of, there had been no reaction. I had an interaction with Kwame Pianim, himself a stalwart of the MPP, who had said before this had been made known. Kwame Pianim, mind you, is an economic advisor on Baumia's campaign team. On the campaign committee, he's an economic advisor. He had said that it would be a terrible move to appoint Ken Ofori-Atta, the former finance minister, in these capacities. That would be like having him, Dr. Amin, having someone looking over his shoulders, and it has happened. You had started talking about that. What is your thinking of that, even before we focus a bit on the economy?
Disgraceful is a clear indication of some lack of confidence in the competence of my good friend Adam. He is not only somebody I believe is capable. He's somebody who is a very driven individual and go to all extents to achieve results, even if it means speaking to people he knows are not in agreement with him politically. So to now have him at the helm of affairs with his former boss close to the president, with a title and a portfolio that is largely undefined, largely overarching over anything that the Minister of Finance is going to do, is worrying. You are looking at investment and also financial issues. And last time I checked, that is a function of the Minister of Finance. So I'm particularly worried that because of the public outcry over the performance of Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, the president has decided to move the Minister of Finance to the presidency and appointed Ken Ofori-Atta still as the Minister of Finance, but under a different portfolio. Believe me or not, I believe Mohamed Amin Adam is going to be having to take some orders from that so-called special.
But you cannot say that for sure. You cannot say that for sure. It doesn't necessarily. You cannot say that for sure.
It's special. When somebody is special, it means that it breaks the norms of everything, due process. And when he speaks, he has to listen. He's a senior advisor. That means that all other advisors fall in line. It is just like making him a little above the vice president, which I'm not surprised. But you see, this is a cliche. From where I sit as a northerner, I always have, sometimes when you are given the opportunity to do something, you have to do it under somebody. You are never really power and given the opportunity to take your own choices. It's happening to Honorable Mohamed Amin Adam, unfortunately. Many know that it has happened to the vice president, and the vice president himself came out to say he is not in charge. That showed that he was dominated over 7 years, a sign of weaknesses, but anyway, it happened. So you now have Mohamed Amin Adam made finance minister, just in the books, and you have a real finance minister.
Are you suggesting a perpetuation of ethnic bias against people of northern extraction? Is that what you are suggesting?
I don't have to say it. I don't want to go down that debate, but that has always been a case here. If it gets to a time that people are calling for inclusion and diversity, they get a northerner, put him somewhere and weaken him so that he is there just as a figurehead, and still others are calling the shots. I believe that it is high time that we northerners begin to speak this unequivocally. It doesn't matter which party we are in, that when we are given a position, we want to be given the position and the powers that go with it, rather than giving that superficial appointment for us to just take salaries and others do the work. You are here in this country when the vice president, somebody who is number 2 in the hierarchy of things in this country, who acts as president when the president is not around, who is chairman of the economic management team, who the Honorable Osafo Mafo came out to praise highly as being instrumental and other things, come to tell you that he is just a driver mate. In fact, the kind of driver mate that has never driven the car but wants to now own his own car. That is a cliche of what always happens when you have this so-called inclusive and inclusion politics, where some people from so-called ethnic minorities and people at the periphery are seen to be empowered on paper, but behind the scenes controlled and by some puppet masters. This is the kind of structure you have, where you have a minister that is one way or the other at the mercy of an advisor in the presidency, who happens to be the cousin of the president, who has been at the helm of affairs for 7 years. You found the need that, okay, he has to give way. And then you appoint him, more or less elevating him and giving him a position that is fluid, that has no boundaries. That's more or less what it is. Nobody knows who the special advisor answers to, apart from the president. And this is the murky situation that the Honorable Mohamed Amin Adam is going to find himself. Even if Kenneth Forita is an advisor, he's going to be able to overrule what Mohamed Amin Adam does just by speaking into the ear of the president. And this is very worrying. I feel for him. Years back, knowing him when we were growing up, I believe he would have walked away, but he thinks he owes this country a lot. Even despite the difficult situation, he wants to do something. I pity him anyway, but he has my prayers. But this smacks of a lack of confidence in the existing system. The last time we spoke, I told you that it is a cabinet of armor bearers. Everyone you have in cabinet, most of them have their godfathers lurking in the corridors of power, either as ministers or advisors. And the president just changed the names to save the criticism, but didn't change the actors who are still behind the scenes doing the same old things that they did that brought us here. So I'm particularly disappointed that the president was bold enough to fool Ghanaians. I don't blame him. We have been gullible for 7 years. Maybe it's time we start asking questions and speaking directly to him like I'm doing, because he is our president, he's an elected leader, and
right.
Sometimes nobody hates Ken Oforiatta. We just felt that he was very bad at the office. He didn't do a lot. He led this country onto his knees. Didn't take us to hospital when we needed to go to hospital. Carried us there in the structure. And when they give us medicine, he tend to administer it and administered it wrongly. If you are changing a doctor, you change to save a life. You just don't change because you think that the person needs to step aside. That is a very, very low bar that the president has set. And I believe that he ought to take this job very seriously.
Right. Let me come in with this. Of course, there's the intervention. Kwame Pianim also asked in that interaction with me, we don't even have an economy. So what is he going to advise on? That is Kwame Pianim on Ken Oforiatta. We don't even have an economy. So what is he going to advise on? Which feeds into part of what you've been saying. But I'd like to find out from you, speaking about the economy, there's, for example, when you look at the graphic business today, you would find out that a tax expert has even said that in respect of Dr. Baumia's tax proposals, they require careful analysis because some of what he's projecting may not necessarily pan out. But focusing on the economy between the last SONA and what we're expecting today, considering factors such as inflation, taxes, the exchange rate, interest rates, the cost of utilities, the general cost of doing business, adding that to the fact that Ghana can't be found in the top 11 when it comes to growth forecasts for economies. Guess what? Niger, Koulet, Niger, is projected to grow at 11.2%. Senegal, Libya, Rwanda, 7.2%. Côte d'Ivoire, neighboring Côte d'Ivoire, 6.8%. Ethiopia, 6.7%. Benin, 6.4%. Djibouti, Tanzania, Togo, 6%. And I'm not denigrating any country by re-echoing, but sometimes we look at other places and think, oh, this and that. Togo is growing at 6%. Uganda, 6%. We are expected to grow at around 4%. That paints a picture. When you look at the economic landscape, how would you assess this administration from the last SONA to what we're expecting today?
Yeah, Ben, and I think I have to also say something. The 4% you just indicated is also contentious. The IMF is projecting us to go around 2.8%. Some people have it that we may do 1.8, 1.9. So the 4% is very magnanimous on your part. But I can understand, you see, Ben, we just came out of COVID and the Ukraine war. And that is why Togo is doing better than us. us. Djibouti is doing better than us. Niger, that is under military junta, shut under heavy sanctions from ECOWAS, is trade and everything is under Shamos is begging to feed these people, yet it's growing. So you can understand. I think that it is Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky that causing the problems for Ghana alone, and that's what the president will tell you. If he doesn't,
Dr. Ayamga, my sincere apologies. I'm going to have to do this. If you could just hold on that analysis just briefly. I want to take a bit of Dr. Peter Anti, who is on a time leash. He's on a bit of a time leash. So if you don't mind, you can just hold on to your thoughts on these. Don't forget them. I'll come right back to you. Is that okay, Dr. Ayamga?
Oh, I'm good, Ben.
All right, I'll come right back to you. Let me also bring into the conversation Dr. Peter Anti, and we'll also be heading to Kumasi in between to get some thoughts from those in the Ashanti region and what they are expecting from the SONA. Dr. Anti, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, my brother.
Good to have you join the conversation. I don't know how much time you have. I don't know whether I'll go to Kumasi and come to you, but we can start the conversation from your end. Education, I know you're going to be focusing more on that, but generally, I would ask you, how do you think we fared between the last SONA and this one? Or last year by this time and this SONA that we're about to hear?
I think in certain areas we've done well. We've seen the reopening of some of the STEM schools that are up and running, and the president mentioned that in the last SONA. So we've seen a considerable investment in TVET, and the president mentioned that in the last SONA. I think we've had challenges with the issue of Wi-Fi in the schools, which I think is on the low side. I don't know the current state of the University of Agric Science at Bunsu, but it was mentioned in the last SONA. So I would say that it looks well from on the surface, but of course we will need to delve deeper into it and see that the things that the president talked about last year have really gotten to the level that we would wish they are, especially since technically this is their last year in government.
Have things gotten or got worse, basically?
For if we restricting ourselves to the issues that were listed in the last year's SONA, then there are basically about 5 of them. Out of the 5 that were mentioned, one, he talked about the reopening of schools under good conditions. That is coming back from the COVID era. And I think that in now there are a lot of safety improvements in our schools, except that in terms of the health facilities, we have not done well. During the COVID, we were able to link some of these schools to what we call their health centers. So when a child is not well, the child is supposed to go to a designated hospital that will take care of that particular child within a certain enclave that the school is supposed to be located in. I think after COVID, we have thrown these away. That's why we have had about 3 or 4 instances of health challenges in the schools where under all those circumstances, this year alone, we've lost all those students. So I think that health-wise, we have not done well for our kids. And I think this is a very important thing because, within our system, a certain number of population is supposed to have access to a certain health facility. And that is what brought about the CHIPS compound and all those things. But if you go to our secondary schools, some of them have students more than 3,000. And there isn't any workable health system in those, in our secondary schools, except those that are supposed to be category A schools and have certain kinds of investment from parents. So you have their sick bays having 1 or 2 things there to help treat sick people. But apart from that, there's nothing that works in our health. So in terms of school health system, we have not done well at all. In terms of allowing students to use Wi-Fi technology in our schools, we were able to institute some of these digital infrastructure in some of the schools. But as at the last time that we checked, and you can check from various works that have been done in that area, most of them are not working. They are not working. I'm told that, about 70 to 80% of those Wi-Fi that were spread across the colleges of education and were supposed to be even in some of the senior secondary schools are not working. I don't know.
And of course, that also brings to mind then when there are the promises now that we're hearing of laptops that will be distributed, among others. I don't know what your reaction is to that.
Yeah, for the laptops and the tablets, I think that one of the things that we don't do well in this country is to roll out policy documents so that those of us in the sector would read, understand, and appreciate the rationale behind the distribution, the modalities, and all those things. We don't have any paper to that effect. All that we've heard is that students are going to be given laptops going forward or tablets with the textbooks on it. If it's about cost of printing textbooks and because of that I want to do the laptop, that is fine.
We seem to have momentarily lost Dr. Peter and All right, Doc, we lost you for about 5 seconds. Just go back and...
All right. If it's about textbooks that you can't print, you do that,
Okay, we're struggling with Dr. Peter Anti as far as that connection is concerned. We'll try to get the connection back up. These usually are connectivity issues. So as we try to circle back to him, let's head to Kumasi in the Ashanti region. And Nana Boakye Yadom is actually standing by there to engage. It's our citizens' microphone. What do they think? What are they expecting from the SONA? Nana Boakye Yadom.
Be speaking to Parliament, addressing the nation on the state, the social and economic state of our country. Today we took to the streets of Kumasi to engage some residents on the current state of the country and the expectations from President Akufo-Addo, as he's expected to be before Parliament today to address the country on our state, economic and social state of the country. And so we'll be interacting with some people we have here with us on their expectations from the president as he is expected to address us at 10 a.m. this morning before Parliament. I have this gentleman here with me. I don't know if you've been monitoring the president, especially when it comes to delivering the State of the Nation's address. Today, does it look like something exceptional for you?
Yeah, I think I've watched last year's and previous years too as well. Today, I expect it to be exceptional because where we are right now, the country state, it is something that the highest expectation of Ghanaians would be that the president should come in and then state the measures that he has in place or his government has in place to help some of the pressing issues that have been happening in the country, looking at the economic recovery issues, inflation, how to provide measures to have higher domestic revenue generation, and also measures as to how we are going to cope in the next years as far as finance is concerned. And aside that, so I think one of the expectations that we are all looking forward to is the president should come and tell us, to at least give us a progress report of some of the things that he said. Last year or last 2 years, there was a conversation around the year of roads and all, and the road minister said last year that this year was going to be the year for all roads to be completed. So infrastructure-wise, we are also looking forward to the government to come in and tell us the progress so far. In terms of health and education, we all know the Agenda 111. And we are just looking forward that this particular address should be one that will give us progress reports of how far those constructions have been, how the progress has been so far. And education-wise, I mean, that's the pressing issue that everyone will be concerned about. So the free SHS, what's the progress? Has there been any review? The year ahead, what is the government going to do? Those are some of the things that we are looking forward to hear. You know, over the years, we've seen how some of these speeches are structured, mostly to score political points and all that. But then I think this year being election year and one of the years that the economy is hard, what we expect the president to come and talk about is measures that he's having to keep some of the pressing issues that we are facing.
Let's look at being an election year and also a crucial one for the government itself and the ruling party. What are some of the things that you think government could do to ensure we have a stable economy, especially in this pressing election year?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I mentioned was the economy. I mean, as we speak right now, apart from last year's inflation rate that was very high, as at now we have 23.5 or so, which I think is a progress. But then election year, you need to impress the people. You need to tell the people that we've been able to do this and that. But most importantly, you need to tell the people how we are going to solve the problem at hand, what we are facing now. So most of the things should be focused on the economy, because I believe that the major indicators has to do with inflation rate, the GDP, and then also our debt structuring, which I believe if the president gives a proper measure as to how these things are going to be worked on, it will be an applause for him. And then coming into the election year or the election month too will be something for his government also, yeah.
Well, being it an election year, Ghanaians are definitely expecting a whole lot from President Akufo-Addo, as he's expected to address the country on our states, the current state of this country, be it an election year. And so the expectations of this gentleman we spoke to not long ago, and so let me get to him. Are you expecting the president to impress you today, and how?
Well, from my perspective, I think the state of the nation's address is a constitutional requirement, and I see the president just fulfilling a constitutional requirement as mandated by Article 67. Yes, it's state of the nation's address. We expect, as my brother said, progress report. The president, when vying for office in his first term, came up with some flagship policies. We expect to see the progress report on those policies, like the free SHS, one district, one dam, one district, one factory, and those stuff. We expect to see how far things are. And then the president in his 2022 State of the Nation's address made mention of Agenda 111, that is building 111 hospitals. And he gave a timeline that by January 2025, these things should be ready. How far are they? Like how advanced have the constructions gone? We need to see these things. As per the Ghana Statistics Service, as at the first 3 quarters of 2023, unemployment rate was at 14.3%. We need to see that how far with NAPCO, the USTAT, what are the measures the president has put in place to alleviate some of these challenges that Ghanaians are facing when it comes to unemployment? Because we always hear the vice president saying they've created about 2 million jobs, but then how is it impacting the life of Ghanaians? Ghanaians need to see that this is the president we voted for. Aside he fulfilling the constitutional mandate by giving us the State of the Nation's address, how practical are some of these things? Because yes, you talk, Ghanaians will listen, but then how practical are some of these things that you talk? We heard about gold for oil, and the president said it was supposed to tackle 2 issues, that is stabilize the foreign reserve and then stabilize the price of fuel. How far are they? Did they achieve the purpose for which it was implemented? So these are some of the things Ghanaians want to know when it comes to the president delivering the State of the Nation's address today.
But I just as I asked this gentleman here with me, it is a pressing year for the government and the ruling party. They are seeking to break the 8, and so definitely would want to hear something that is going to trigger us to go out and vote. Do you think that after today's speech, hearing whatsoever from the president, you would be definitely convinced to go and cast your vote for the party or otherwise?
Well, I am not swayed by words. I'm someone that is swayed by actions. So it's not like what you are going to tell me. It's about based on your track record, your credibility. Because this is not the first State of the Nation's address. There's been so many States of the Nation's address. What were the things, the major issues that came out of these State of the Nation's address? What were the promises that were made? Were they able to be fulfilled? If the president was able to fulfill all these things, and I'm feeling the impact in my life, automatically I'm going to vote for him. But then if I'm pressed, if economically I'm pressed, and then you come to tell me, or you come to deliver a speech that aligns with my thoughts, and then you expect me to vote for you based on that speech, it is not going to happen. So we need to see something practical.
All right, and so Ghanaians are expecting the president to bring out something practical to ensure that it does convince them to participate in the 2024 December 7th general election. But definitely we'll still have to hear from some other Ghanaians who are yet to, just generally all of us are yet to hear from the president. So as we are yet to hear from the president, their expectations and then what we are to generally expect in the State of the Nation's address by the president as we head to the December 7th general elections. And so what are your expectations when it comes to the State of the Nation's address, which will be delivered by the president by 10 a.m. today?
Well, seriously, I don't expect anything. Actually, Ghanaians, the president don't have to talk to Ghanaians on the state of the nation. I think that Ghanaians, as we live in the country, we know our state already. We don't really need the president to tell us our state. Just that Article 67 demands that the president should be in parliament to address a fine. But for us Ghanaians on the streets, we know the state of Ghana already. So we are not really expecting any much from the president.
What is the state of Ghana?
The state of Ghana is that the economy is broke. And we don't need a president to tell us that. We all know the economy is broken, right? Then I think that going forward, it's just unfortunate that politicians always have to take advantage of us and play with our minds. So after today, you hear tomorrow the opposition will go through State of the Nation's address. So they are always playing with us. They are not ready to help us. That's all that I can say.
But you definitely would want the government, the president, to address something, wouldn't you?
Yes, we are.
What are some of the things you would want him to touch on?
The hardship in the country. Ghanaians are facing hardship when it comes to the economy. Business are collapsing. The youth unemployment is rising high. You just saw, we are all seeing the current report from the Ghana Statistical Service, and it's all there for us to see. So I don't know, but I think that something should be done. We need leaders who are ready to address the issues of Ghanaians. We are tired of the book long everyday speeches here and there. I think what the president should be doing, since it's an election year, is to consolidate his gains. As simple as that. If you've been able to institute free SHS, can we look at that? If you are doing one district, one factory, can we look at that? Then probably coming to tell us new things or something. I don't know what they are calling now, the reshuffle that he has done. Some are calling the ministers injury ministers, injury time ministers, and a whole lot. I don't see anything coming out of any of this.
Well, that is an interesting point of view from the gentleman we just spoke with, and he is not really expecting much from the president as he heads to Parliament today. But then, your perspective on the president's State of the Nation's address today?
All right, so this will be President Akufo-Addo's last State of the Nation's address, and as a way of accounting to Ghanaians for his leadership in the last 4 years, or even to go back to the last 8 years. I am expecting him to tell us where he picked us from, where he picked the country from. When he came in, he came with policies like the free SHS, one district, one factory, one village, one dam. Which one village, one dam, I'm not seeing the progress of it personally. So I expect the president to give us a clear view of where he picked the country and where he has taken us to, and where he sees taking us to at the end. I mean, in the last few months that he has, I expect him to be able to talk about bring policies. Even though we have very short months to end his tenure, I expect that he comes out with some policies that are going to cushion our economy. If you check the last year and some few months ago, you could see that we had a very high inflation rate. And since the inception of our IMF bailout, we have seen some stabilization. I'm not saying it is better, because years back we had a very good inflation rate as compared to the current one. But if you check, compare what we have now to some months ago, you could see we have made some progress. So what are the ways the president is planning to fast track things so that we'll have the third tranche of our IMF bailout funds released so that it can help our economy better? I'm not expecting any new tax, because Ghanaians are already suffering. To be frank, things are not good as we compare to the olden days. So I'm not expecting any new tax. There's this emission levy tax which was called off for further consultation. I am hoping that the president will not come and tell us that they are bringing it back, because personally, and then as an environmentalist, I'm not seeing the progress that we've made with the taxes that we have based on our environmental aspects. We had the 1% levy on waste management. What have we achieved with that? Because we're already paying tax for waste on the side of waste. So if we've not seen any progress on that, I'm not expecting him to burden Ghanaians with more taxes as well. And as a forester, in 2020, President Akufo-Addo said in the State of Nations address that he's putting down plans and policies to ensure that we stop destroying our water bodies, our forests, from Galamsey. And then he said that people, there were this issue of missing excavators, and he said it point blank at Parliament that we are going to tackle that issue, and people that were found to be culprits were going to be punished. As at now, we don't know how far that has gone. So as an environmentalist and a forester, I expect the president to come out with, give us an account of how far he has taken our Galamsey fight to and what he intends to do in his last few days. These are some of the things that I'm expecting from the president.
All right, so interesting perspectives from some Ghanaians we have interacted with ahead of the State of the Nation's address, which will be delivered by the president. It is a constitutional requirement. Article 67 requires that the president will be before Parliament to present the State of the Nation. And so we are going to hear from the president himself. What is the state of our country, our economic status, our financial status, and the social status of the country? Everything will be heard from President Akufo-Addo this morning. And so these are the expectations of some Ghanaians we interacted with here in Kumasi. And so they are expecting the president to definitely touch on some crucial matters concerning Ghanaians and other interesting aspects of our lives, which must be also addressed ahead of the crucial 2024 general elections. My name is Nana Boachi Dankwa Yadom. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much. That was Nana Boachi Dankwa Yadom bringing us the scoop from Kumasi. Interesting thoughts shared. One of them saying, we know the state of the nation already. We don't need any politician to come and tell us. But those were his sentiments, among others. Very articulate, and they put the issues on the front burner. Let me come back. Dr. Peter Anti, you were making a point about the laptops and a few other policies that sometimes are not put out there in policy documents so that you can assess them. Let's dwell briefly on that and look at other core issues like feeding for students at the basic level, school feeding program and where it is, and then you can even extend it to the senior high school level, free SHS, and then the constraints in there. You now have students, so cocoa, this or the and this and then the broad, your own sugar, your own bread, stuff like that. A lack of beds and all that. What are your expectations on all these?
Yeah, so as I was saying, I think that we need a policy document on the laptops that are supposed to be shared to the students. I think that is what ideally needs to be done, so that people would understand the rationale, do cost-benefit analysis, and all those things to agree with the government and help shape that particular policy. So that it wouldn't be, this is not the first time we are sharing laptops to students. We did that, I think, during 2011, 2012. Yeah. Coming back from ban reduce, one student, one laptop policy, thereabouts. So we, from 2008, 2009, 10, 11, 12, we've been sharing laptops, and those things, they don't last because we don't go through the rigorous process of policy formulation, policy reshaping to be able to get the benefit out of whatever we want to do. And we will be doing back and forth with some of these things. So we would wish that we have a clear direction on that for maybe other people to, subsequent authorities to also follow suit. For the feeding issue, school feeding has been a challenge. I think that one of the things for me, I think this year the president need to do or would have to do is to try to firm up most of the things that he's introduced, especially with the free senior high school. I think that the best legacy to leave is to give a clear direction as to how sustainable this policy is going to be. If you are not careful, or if he's not careful and he leaves and the next thing you hear is different issues with the policy, you have not been successful. So I think one of the things he needs to do is to sit down, think through the policy, and find a clear pathway to ensure that this policy is sustainable and would be beneficial to generations to come.
Quick question. Every Ghanaians in general, I want free SHS to stay. I'm not even personally benefiting from it, but maybe some relative or someone is benefiting. It's a good thing. But do you think enough has been done by this administration to guarantee that when it is gone, free SHS, whether financially or otherwise, can stand the test of time?
Unfortunately, no, because you see, the point is that they have told us that if they leave, the policy will collapse. And I don't think that is good for the country, because I think that policies are made for the people and not specifically to satisfy any political group of people. So if they are hinging their political fortunes on the free senior high school, then it is very, very unfortunate. As at now, you might have, or you should benefit from the political angle, but there should be a new focus as to how do we sustain this policy. And when you get to talk about the sustainability issue, you know that the government have not been forthcoming with how they think that this policy can be sustained. It's all about let me be there and I will ensure that your children enjoy free senior high school. What is the way forward? Let me be there and I will ensure that free senior high school continues. I think going forward, one of the discussions that the media people will need to push, especially Ben, is to ask the presidential candidates to let us understand what is their way forward for the free senior high school. Of course, the vice president have let us understand that he is pursuing a new vision. He said he would want to improve the free senior high school. What is the way forward? How are we going to sustain it? The former president have said that he is going to review the free senior high school. What kind of review is he thinking about? Is he thinking about reviewing the financial model? Is he thinking about reviewing the operational aspects of the policy? Let us be clear. They should let us understand clearly the focus and the future of this all-important policy that every child in the country is going to benefit from.
Quick question. Quick question. I have a quick question for you. It just came to mind. Do you think we've got to the point where maybe we may have to pause, and I say this very cautiously, because there are policies sometimes across the world where to make it better, you have to pause and then institute everything seamlessly and then start again? Or should we go ahead with it while we try to tweak it? What do you think?
I think I'll go for the second one. We should continue with this and then we tweak it. And that is why we need to come round the table and look at what you've done so far. You've done 7 years of this policy. You have not opened up for people to sit down and then do a critical assessment of the policy. Those who try to do it, you are tagging them as anti-free senior high school. You are tagging them as opposition members. You are tagging them as naysayers. How do you expect the policy to improve? So that is where the problem is. We really need to sit down and think through it. And it is clear, it is more of where the money is coming from. And it has been established that anytime the government faces fiscal challenges, monies to these schools are not going. How do you deal with that? That is why most people are saying there should be another source of funding. You should be coming out with, let's say, 40-60% from the government, from revenue, from the oil fund and all those things, 60%. There should be a 40% that is coming from somewhere that will support, so that when the government is having financial challenges, that 40% will hold the policy till the government gets, like we do with the tertiary institutions, the universities. You know that sometimes the subventions delay, but the institutions are able to pay their workers. How are they able to do that? They do that through their IGFs. So when the subvention comes, they just put the money back there. That is what we are saying should be done for the free senior high school, so that somebody in a prestigious school like Wesley Girls will not go and be sleeping on the floor, will not be sitting on plastic chairs in the classroom. There will not be congestion in our schools, so that our children will have that kind of psychological mindset to study and grow up and develop in a way that we want them to develop. If anybody requests for this and you think that person is an opposition member or a naysayer, then I think that you don't mean well for the policy.
Right. Hold for me, Dr. Anti. I know you have to go, but hold for me. Let me circle back to you. Hold for me, Dr. Ayamga. I've not forgotten about what you were going to talk about. But let me also bring into the conversation Charles Nyaba. He's Executive Director, Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. Mr. Nyaba, thank you for joining the conversation. I'd like to go straight for the jugular. When it comes to agriculture, how have we fared? What are your expectations? What do you hope to hear from the SONA? You'd have to unmute, Mr. Nyaba. So we'll be engaging Charles Nyaba. He's Executive Director, Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. Once we can hear him, we'll pick his thoughts on those questions I asked. But like I mentioned to you, we're going to be looking at all crucial aspects of our economy, the economy itself and the different strands, agriculture now. Mr. Nyaba, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clear.
Did you get the question?
Yes, please.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Let me say good morning to your good self and my co-panelists. As you indicated, agriculture is crucial, especially around this time that the economy is almost at the verge of crash. I say that because if you observe for the past 2 weeks now, you realize that the cedi has started its free flow again. Every day we get up and then we hear depreciation of the cedi. Meanwhile, along the line, there was a bit of stability, which I would attribute to good performance of the agriculture sector after the resignation of the former agri minister and taken over by the new minister, who is a bit considerate and then communicate well with farmers. So when you look at the later part of
Hello, Mr. Nyaba. All right, it appears we've
2020, because when the new minister came to office, even though there hasn't been any investment on farmers, if I say investment after the suspension of PFA, Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 1, and with the introduction of Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2, farmers were to benefit through aggregator system that was introduced. But the whole of 2023, that didn't happen. Now, we still went ahead, farmers went ahead, mobilized their own resources, increased investment, procured their own inputs. So you go to most of the farming growing areas and you realize that we have a lot of foodstuffs that farmers are struggling to sell. You go to most of the rice growing areas, farmers have a lot of rice, they can't sell. Maize, farmers have a lot of maize, they can't sell. We still have soya beans, we have yam. This is because after the new intervention came, that is Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2, even though farmers didn't get support from government, by then they were not deceived to also wait and get inputs which were of inferior quality, leading to low yields. So that has helped a bit. Now, what we were expecting the government to do is to ensure that this produce, which are in abundance at the community level that farmers cannot sell, we go in there and mop them up and store them, because very soon prices will skyrocket again. Then you release them into the market. As we speak, Nigeria are in food crisis. And I just pick information from most of our food grain areas, especially the border towns. The Nigeria traders are in to come and mop what we have. The crisis in Burkina Faso, they have already closed their borders. Yet they allow traders who go to outside those areas to buy produce to bring them in. But their commodities cannot go out. What are we doing as a country to ensure that we protect little that we have? We haven't seen any government policy on that. So I expect that as we are going to hear the president read the SONA, we want to hear interventions that will protect farmers, that will provide farmers market. And then we also want to hear what kind of investment farmers will expect as we are preparing for the 2024 farming season. Next month, we will start clearing our lands, some areas will start planting. We want to hear what is there under the Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2. Will we expect to still get inputs as subsidies? The reason why we see the Ghanaian farmers non-competitive is that, look, we just allow the farmers to do their own thing. Then we expect them to compete with countries where they subsidize their farmers. In other countries, they take loans with interest rate of less than 5%. We go to bank, take interest rate of over 30%. So if I put my product on the market and then somebody from Thailand who is taking interest rate of almost 0%, putting the same commodity on the market, how can we sell at the same price? Okay, so we expect to see interventions in those areas. And where can those interventions go? You go into mechanization services, go into subsidizing inputs, go into creating more irrigation facility to ensure that we produce all year round. These are the things that we expect to hear from the government.
My final bit to you, at least for this, at this point of the conversation, our major cash crop, cocoa. We cannot talk about a State of the Nation address and talk about agriculture without mentioning cocoa. You would realize that there are serious problems. And many of our trees, because of the lack of systemic controls, like you've said, many of our trees have been around for decades. They are old. The yield levels are low. And we also have to deal with smuggling and everything in between. Now we hear year on year Last year, the productivity levels, if you compare 2023 to 2024, it has declined by about 27.9%, moving from 683,000 metric tons to 492,000 metric tons. And this is a great cause for worry. As far as cocoa, our major cash crop, is concerned, what will be your reflections?
Yeah, so actually we saw this coming. I think last year I did discuss this, that we don't expect any major reforms in the cocoa yields, and we rather expect yields to decline. And it's simply because majority of cocoa farmers prefer to release their lands for galamsey activities than to allow the cocoa trees. Some of them voluntarily sold their cocoa farms for galamseys. Others were forcefully taken by sub-chiefs and community leaders. Look, I have a farmer who said he was there before he realized he was given some amount, that his farm has been sold, and this is the proceeds they got. So they want to give him this amount to go and found a new area to produce. What are we doing about galamsey? You go to most of the cocoa growing areas and the farms are virtually gone. That is one. In the past, we used to benefit from free cocoa fertilizer, pesticides, and weedicides. Now those things are not there again. And if you take a crop like cocoa, if you know how farmers labor, by the end of the day, they don't really make any profit. Okay? So if government don't intervene to actually support these farmers, there's no way they are going to increase their yield. So any realistic or profit-minded farmer will prefer to actually sell the cocoa farm for galamsey activities than to continue to do that. Look, who are those who benefit from cocoa proceeds? Anybody who had opportunity to work cocoa board, they are there, they don't really do any serious work. But by the end of the day, go and see the allowances and the salaries that they receive. We will get, when there is increase in world price of cocoa, the percentage that goes to the farmers is less than 50%. So why wouldn't they smuggle? If I can take my cocoa to Cote d'Ivoire and I'll get almost 50% price higher than what I'm getting in Ghana, why wouldn't I take it there? So our poor performance of cocoa, of the cocoa sector, is partly due to negligence from government, focusing on the low-hanging fruits. We want the proceeds of cocoa, yet we don't want to increase investment in cocoa. And we are allowing galamsey to actually kill the sector. So I think I would rather call for all of us, including your good self, to see the decline in cocoa performance in recent times to negligence of government investing in cocoa farming, especially allowing galamsey people to go and take cocoa lands for galamsey activities.
Thank you. Hold for me, Mr. Nyaba. Let me bring back Dr. Ayamga, and I'm so glad you've been so patient with us holding on. I'm just looking at the latest when it comes to our e-levy, for example. Everyone is feeling the pinch of that. Collections, as far as 2023 are concerned, 1.19 billion. It's shot up. It's doing better than initially when it was barely raking at about 450 million. But before I left to have an interaction or moved on to have an interaction with Dr. Anti, I had put before you the economy, considering inflation, taxes, the exchange rate, interest rates, cost of utilities, cost of doing business. This potpourri, what do you make of it? What are your expectations in the SONA ahead of 2025? Yes,
Ben, as I indicated, being an economist in Ghana now is very easy because even some of my undergraduate students can tell you the state of Ghana better than the president would do because they feel it, as one of your discussants mentioned in the interview. You don't need to do any analysis to know what is happening to inflation, unemployment, growth, and so on. And that is what has been the worrying trend here. I was just looking at, for example, what do we say, our city. When we hit the IMF deal, our expectation was that it would trigger some sell-off by speculators. It will force them to change the profile of their stocks and begin to decrease the demand for foreign currency. But it just marginally reduced it for a short while, stabilized it for a short while, and the city has started falling again. That tells us that the benefits we are expecting to reap from the IMF program are not going to be realized because the trends in most of these indicators are going the opposite direction. You take inflation, for example.
But they've been moving in the right direction for a while. So, and we've had a stimulus package. We've had 2 batches of about 600 million. We expect some other money from the World Bank and some other support. Are you just saying that all of this has meant nothing? It's gone down the drain?
Exactly. You see, when you are a statistician or you are dealing with numbers, trends are very important. And consistency in the trend is normally an indicator that we have actually turned the corner. Not the momentary impact of a stimulus, where people just do a knee-jerk reaction and then we observe and realize that, okay, this thing is not going to be sustainable. So the old trend, when you have that situation, you know that your solutions are not working. And that is the case here with the stimulus we are getting from the IMF, that when we hit the deal, you saw that the city stabilized and at least appreciated marginally. After that, it has started declining, as my brother Dr. Ayaba said. If you look at inflation, when we hit the season, it started decreasing. That is because we are also in the harvest season, and the food basket, the price of the food basket has been declining. But now, if you look at it, it's stabilized for a while. Inflation has started increasing again. You don't need to talk about our growth because while many are projecting 4%, secondary analysis is showing that we are not going to go up to 3%. And that is a problem. That means that since 2016, we have never been able to manage the 3-point growth that we experienced. And if we are doing worse than then it means that we are not also making progress. There is something we do in this country that we don't do things within policy framework. We like the bits and pieces, and then we try to introduce projects rather than some consistent economic plan. As Dr. Ante rightly said, what, for example, is the distribution of a laptop going to solve? What problem is it solving? How do we plan this? It just came out of a knee-jerk reaction, and hey, we are in and we are doing it. So this is the key challenge we are having to deal with. I also still feel strongly that because we did not outline a clear path in terms of how we were going to manage the receipts from the IMF program, they were left to the capacities of the finance minister. And when they came, some select contractors were paid, some select projects were financed, and others had to just look on. So the lack of a consistent plan to follow is what has ensured that we have not been able to maximize the potential benefit from the program as we speak. And I don't want to mince words that we are facing very serious economic challenges as of now. And the IMF program seems not to be helping us. Yes, we have achieved some momentary stabilization, but going forward, how do we proceed with that? The question is, what next? Is there any consistent growth? Is there any consistent appreciation of the cedi? Is there any consistent stabilization of our reserves? All these questions are left in the whims and caprices of whosoever is dealing with the data. And the president is going to come into parliament today and tell us that they have turned the corner, they have stabilized the economy, and despite Ukraine and Russia, things are looking good. But as you rightly point, you look at Togo, you look at Cote d'Ivoire, you look at Senegal, and all these people who are also under the impact of the Russia and Ukraine war are doing better than us. There is no way you can turn this and blame it on
even Libya, that has had its crises, not just one crisis, crises post Muammar Gaddafi. Even Libya is projecting 7.9%. That is a projection as far as the IMF is concerned. Libya.
So it's an opportunity for the president to come and give an excuse, shift blames, and then tell us something that is on paper, but it's not actually being implemented in practice. I am hoping that there will be some very courageous MPs and fact checkers who hold the president to the standard today. But I think that it is a constitutional mandate he's going to fulfill, and it's going to give us a shift blame, point fingers away from himself, which is rather unfortunate.
Right.
Don't need to miss words. Yeah.
Hold for me. Let me bring in Professor Lord Mensah. He is with the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. And good morning to our viewers, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. It appears today I've donned my chichi. That looks like yours. Chichi, spectacles. And it's always good to have you. So here's what I am going to throw to you. What for you will be a realistic SONA by way of the economy, where realistic means a true picture rather than a picture based on political tinctures? In other words, don't use any spectacles. What is the reality on the ground? Your take.
Right. So we were expecting certain indicators. And when we talk about economic, growth, and it does not transcend into economic development, then the growth is just numbers that we can tout out there and be throwing them in the air. Let me put it that way. Because it is expected that once the economy starts growing, that growth will transcend into the people's life, i.e. creating more jobs, and then also opening up businesses here and there. But that is not what we're seeing. A true lens of this economy is an economy that I always say has been hijacked by the government. And we had opportunity somewhere 2019, to keep a certain trajectory where the economy will be transferred to the business and individual. But we didn't keep to that trajectory. The reason why we did not keep to this trajectory is that when we found ourselves with the IMF, I'm talking about the 2018 IMF that went, you realize that the indicators were looking good. Our budget deficit was heading towards the 6%, almost moving to the 5% that, the IMF prescribed for us. And then also interest rates were coming down. Inflation was coming down at the time. Looking at all this, we seem heading towards, a certain direction. But at the end of the day, we thought, okay, being under IMF was a problem. And so quickly, the finance minister, the IMF program ended. And when it ended, it's like, we have to celebrate an end to an IMF program.
Do you feel, quick question on that, I'm sorry to interject, do you feel we rushed out of an IMF program in the sense that it would have ended at a point, but do you feel we are always eager to get out when we are not even ready to do the right things? Do you get a sense of that?
Yes, if you look at the attitude, the position of the policymakers at the time, it was even a campaign promise that we have to get out of IMF. It was IMF that is restricting our spending, which for me, it was a misnomer because at the end of the day, it was under the IMF that we're experiencing certain, economic, indicators that is pushing the economy to a direction that will be good for all of us. We came out from the IMF, the budget deficit that was around 6%. The first time we exited the IMF, when we read the budget, we created a budget deficit of about 11%, which gives room for more borrowing. Borrowing 50% from the domestic market and then borrowing 50% from the international market. That kept interest rates high. And it brought the interest rate to a level where we couldn't carry. And as a result of that, had to go through this debt restructuring and all those. And then also being priced out from the, international market. So from where I sit, I think, the actual, situation on the ground is that the Ghanaian economy is an economy that has been hijacked by the government all this while. It's government that has been doing business. Businesses are not in business. Individuals are not in business. And as a result of that, the economic indicators are so high. Look at interest rate, so high. Talking about inflation, so high. Nigeria just went on to inflation of about, 30%. And they are on the street. We went to somewhere 54%. And let me put these numbers out there. If you supposed to buy an item, that was 100 cedis last year, and inflation build-up is 54%. That is more than half of the price added. So 100 cedis will be around 150. If inflation reduced to about 30%, 30% of that 150 is approximately 50 Ghana cedis. And so add that 50 Ghana cedis to the 150. That is about, that's about 200 cedis. So the 100 cedis is now, 200 cedis. An item worth of 100 cedis is now 200 cedis. So just these two numbers, together with the 20% or the 24% that we've been recording recently, then it means you are going way, way above, what the pocket can hold. We're talking about inflation here. So from where I sit, I think, the actual, state of the economy is an economy where Ghanaians' disposable income has been reduced drastically. Now, when you receive your salary, right, the purchasing power of your salary has been reduced, to a point where food alone is taking about 60% of your salary. So effectively, that is supposed to be the true state of the Ghanaian economy. But, what are we expecting from the president? We're going to get strings of words together, and these words are going to indicate, we've done well, we've been able to negotiate on our, external bilateral, debt. We've been able to, we are in negotiation with the commercial creditors, and these are all achievements that Ghanaians should praise. No, that is not supposed to be the case. The economy has been running for the past 7 years. This is the time that we're supposed to realize what Ghanaians were promised.
Right.
So we can measure you, the president, to be the difference between what you promised us some years back and then what is being felt now.
Right.
That difference, the bigger it is, the more it shows that you did not perform. And I can tell you that.
So by way of deduction, we could actually look at his first SONA, second SONA in between, and look at what has been done up to the seventh SONA, and look in between.
Put them together. You will see the variations, a huge difference, and that difference tells you that the economy is not doing well as expected.
Very quickly, Prof, two quick things. I want you to look at them very briefly. Ghana, when you look at projected growth, we are far behind. Even the 4% projection, Dr. Ayamga says we may not even hit 3%. But you look at countries like Niger, and I put it in context because it's a coup-led nation, 11.2%. Libya, after Muammar Gaddafi, 7.9%. We have countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Benin, Tanzania, even Djibouti, projected to grow better than we do. We often sometimes look at Togo and say, Togo. Togo is having a 6% projection of growth, and we are looking at 4%, and some say even that will not make. Then there is the issue of Ken Ofori-Atta, now confirmed appointment as senior presidential advisor and special envoy for international finance and private sector investments. Your quick reflections on these two matters.
Yeah, on the issue of the growth, you see, the Ghanaian economy now is in distress. And every economy that is in debt distress, your growth is very slow. In some cases, I try to relate the sources of financing that is available to the government and the kind of expenditure that the government can make. Clearly, when the government spends in Ghana as we speak, that is when we realize the growth, because the economy has been concentrated in government spending. When we talk about GDP, we are looking at government spending, we're talking about business spending and individual level, spending. But as we speak now, it's government spending that it takes our growth. Country is in distress, government cannot spend its way as expected. And we are restricted to read a budget that will have a deficit pointing towards the 5% or to some extent 0% as prescribed by the IMF program. So under the IMF program, you can grow, but you cannot grow all out as as compared to if you are not under the IMF program. And then you see, in financing some of the capex, roads, and other things that are ongoing in the country. But this is a government that is borrowing on short-term, that is the only financing sources that we can be sure of as we speak now. If you talk about export, there are some uncertainties as far as the commodity market is concerned. But the borrowing in the domestic market has even been limited to, short-term, up to 1 year. And so you ask yourself, all these projects that are ongoing, does it make sense? And I know very well I can compare our situation with that of Greece. When Greece went down, into debt distress, it affected infrastructural development clearly. And it was on the ground. I mean, you can feel it on the street that the government is struggling to pay its debt. And as a result of that, long-term investment must get halted for some time. But what do we see? We see government on one hand going out to provide roads and other things. The question Ghanaians must ask now is that what is the financing sources of this project? I understand some of them are, World Bank and IMF project, African Development Bank project and other things. That has been earmarked already. And so, the funds are sitting there, waiting for the project to be executed. That's different. But I'm talking about other things that will feed into the government capex in the 2024 budget that was read. Right. We have to be careful as a country and ask questions. So from where I sit, those growth, that Niger and all those are propagating, the difference is that Ghana is in debt distress. And if a country is in debt distress, you cannot grow, as a country that is not in debt distress. And then the issue of the finance minister that has been appointed, as a shadow finance minister who is going to supervise, the current finance minister. For me, I think... But that's not the role that has been designated to him. It doesn't say anywhere that he's going to be a shadow finance minister supervising Dr. Amin. That is my language. Because where he's going to sit, he's going to take care of international negotiations. And I know the president may have certain kind of, background, each situation. That is why he will, position him that way. Because him being the face that you've been using for our debt negotiations and things, I think he wants to place him there to continue. But that is, uncalled for. Our creditors understand that the country is Ghana that owes, not Ken Ofori-Atta that owes. That is what we need to appreciate. So if because of the international, debt that is placing Ken in that position, I don't think, we need that position as a country now because it's going to add up to a cost. You can even place him, as a consultant, as and when you need him, you call him. But even that one, I don't think anybody will hire a consultant that has driven the economy in a certain direction and you still want to keep that consultant on board. So from where I sit, I think that position is not called for. Our creditors know that they are negotiating with Ghana, and whichever face that will represent Ghana on the international market, that person should be accepted. And again, it's an administration. We deal with documents. And so we expect that at least whoever takes over as finance minister will be in tune. And we are fortunate to see even the deputy finance minister. So unless, they tell me that the deputy finance minister wasn't in tune, whatever was happening in the country as well with, our external creditors is concerned. So I think, that position, we don't need it now as we speak.
All right. Interesting thoughts. It's interesting as well to know that Kwame Pianim, who is on the economic team of Dr. Bawumia as an advisor, before this became public, had mentioned to me that it would be a terrible move to appoint Ken Ofori-Atta in the way that we've appointed him, and asking the question, we don't have an economy, so what is he going to advise on? But gentlemen, we have just about 4 minutes to wrap the conversation. I want to be fair, give each of you a bite. I'll start with you, Dr. Anti, if you're still with us. 1 minute. What do you want to hear from the president? What are your expectations? 1 minute, and then we go. 1 minute to each of you, starting with Dr. Anti. It appears we just lost Dr. Peter Anti, unfortunate. Let me go to Charles Nyaba. What will be your parting words for us?
Yeah, so we all agree that agriculture sector is the foundation
to strong economy. Because with a strong performance of the agriculture sector, you see that the various economic indicators will point positive. Yet we haven't seen any radical investment in the agriculture sector in the past few years. So as a farmer, as we prepare for the season, we expect to hear the government taking a new leaf on the agriculture sector, especially through the PFJ Phase 2, to tell farmers how we are going to invest in input subsidies, how we are going to invest in mechanization services, government plans to address the issue of climate change through creation of irrigation facilities to support off-season farming, and how we are going to mop up the excess rice, maize, and soybeans that the farmers are currently struggling to sell so that they'll be able to go into the new season. That's what we expect to hear.
All right. Charles Naba, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Let me go to Dr. Ayamga. Your parting words before I circle back to Professor Mensah. Dr. Ayamga?
Thank you. I think Senior colleague of Lord Mensah took the words out of my mouth. I think that the government ought to give the economy its actors, allow industries to lead growth, to lead the spending. Government is too powerful, and in an election year, I'm afraid it is going to send the resources to places that anchor its electoral fortunes rather than stimulate economic growth. I want to see the president being more concerned about his legacy rather than trying to see whether he can secure another term for his party. I believe that if he wants us to remember him as a president, for now, it doesn't look good for his legacy. We should be more concerned about that. He has just a few months to make the name President Akufo-Addo worth mentioning in the future. And I want him to concentrate on that. Tell Ghanaians the truth, and then begin to force government to spend in areas that will stimulate economic growth and allow industries to grow.
Thank you, Dr. Ayamga. Let me take Professor Mensah. Professor Lord Mensah, 1 minute.
Yes, so I'm not expecting anything different. The SONA has already been written, and it's going to be the usual posture. That's sequencing of, where that portrays, things are going well. Of course, we appreciate that government has its own achievement that he thinks, he's doing well. Those things are going to be expatiated in this document that we're going to listen to, from the president. And, having that, it's a normal thing that, this government has been doing. But, the government needs to appreciate that there are good achievements and the bad achievement, holistically determines what Ghanaians feel. And so if you are going to give a statement and you end up, parading the good things, forgetting about the negative, things that are outweighing the positives, then obviously, you may not be communicating to Ghanaians as expected. But then, from where I sit, that SONA has been written. It's going to be a sequence of, government achievement. And a typical example will be, our bilateral negotiations that, we ended recently, which the government will, put to Ghanaians that, look, we've done well having this negotiation. But the question is, how did we get here? How did we get here? And even if you've had, that negotiation gone through, is an achievement that will put food in the Ghanaians' pocket? Would it bring inflation down immediately before the end of the year? Those are the things, we may have to look at. But from what I say, it's going to be the usual string of words that portrays, government positives without looking at, the negatives. And Ghanaians may not be happy hearing that again.
Thank you, Professor Mensah. If we have Dr. Peter Anti, we'll give him his minute, and if not, we'll wrap it here. All right. So thank you, gentlemen. Those who joined the conversation this morning, Charles Nyaba, Executive Director, Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. We also had Professor Lord Mensah of the University of Ghana Business School joining the conversation. Dr. Peter Anti is with the Institute for Education Studies. He joined the conversation. We had Dr. Michael Ayamga, who is with the University for Development Studies. So stay with us. Of course, from around 10 o'clock. And I say around 10 o'clock because usually the SONA doesn't start when we expect that it will start. But we'll be here. We'll bring you live coverage of the SONA. I'll have my team joining me in studio as we dissect the past SONA, what we can expect in the current one. And when today's is done, we'll share our thoughts with you. So you don't want to be anywhere else for that. But coming up, we're hosting the Old Achimota Association, which has a legacy project, an asset fund event this weekend. If you're an Accra, well, this one is for you. But even if you're not, let's support a good cause, yeah? We'll be right back on the AM show to tell you more. Do stay.